Welcome to Medical Intuition Illuminated, the podcast bringing light to the wisdom of the body. I'm your host, Laura Wise, a medical intuitive and psychic medium dedicated to helping you understand the subtle and layered ways your body communicates. Here, we explore the meeting point of intuition, physiology, and energy, approaching the body not as a puzzle to fix, but as a wise, expressive system that's always speaking. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not medical advice, and it does not replace professional healthcare, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns. Hello and welcome. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what I have learned as a medium. And although my focus now is very much on the body and somatics and things related to that, I originally trained as a medium that connects with past loved ones. I still do offer mediumship readings. I will sometimes have past loved ones show up within my other sessions as well, have things to tell the person who is having the reading. And I also will frequently have past loved ones show up in my personal life, whether they're people that I know or knew, whether they're people that my loved ones or my friends or people kind of connected to me have known. And over the summer, there was someone within my family that was in the process of passing away. And so I was so grateful for my abilities that I've trained with mediumship to be able to offer guidance and comfort and pass along messages from this loved one as they were in the process of passing away and then immediately after they passed away that were extremely helpful. And so this inspired me to want to share some things that I hear over and over again from past loved ones or people that are in spirit, things that they've shown me, things that they've told me. And so I wanted to share 5 things that your loved ones in spirit want you to know, because this happens quite a lot and these are big themes. So I thought it might be helpful for anyone who, might have these questions or has wondered about this or wants to explore what their loved one might be experiencing on the other side. And this is, again, things that I've gotten directly from spirit. I've also heard, similar things from other mediums or other people that I've worked with as well. But this is from my own direct experience. So let's go ahead and get into it. So number 1, they are well. I frequently hear this question from my clients where they want to know, first and foremost, if their loved one is okay on the other side, if they made it, if they're in spirit, if they're happy, if they're comfortable, if they're still in pain. And I want to assure you they are well. They are no longer in pain. They are not scared. There is a lot of comfort that they have. Yes, they are still with you. Yes, they can see you. And this is, I find, very comforting for a lot of people. Again, especially if that person, passed really suddenly or passed in a very, painful or tragic way, or if they had been in quite a lot of pain or discomfort towards the end of their life. But I have never had a spirit come through that talks about pain in that way at all. There's no physical discomfort. There's no pain. In fact, quite the opposite. Many spirits actually will talk about how they feel finally free of that body, or they're free of the pain. They feel like they can move around much better. They are, much more in access, to them. They're best version of themselves. That's usually what I see them come through as, is kind of their favorite version. Sometimes if the person only knew a certain kind of version of them or them at a certain age, they'll come through as that just so that we can verify who it is specifically that we're talking to. But, a lot of times they will show themselves, at their kind of peak period of when they felt most like themselves. And, if a person lived a full life, that's often, sometime around midlife, when they really kind of lock into who they feel like they really are. But I guess, as I said, I've never had a spirit come through and say, that they're in any discomfort. Almost always I will see, that there were loved ones that came around the time of their passing and kind of helped them cross over. They will help guide them to the other side. They will, provide kind of that guidance and support and connect them to that crossing over period. And so it's oftentimes, if they were really close to their parents will be the ones that will help them cross over if their parents are in spirit. Sometimes it's a spouse, sometimes it's a sibling, sometimes it's a really good friend. But usually, whoever is already in spirit that they were very close to is ready and ready to receive them. Sometimes it's even a pet. I've had a few, cats and dogs show up as guides for them as well, and they're kind of natural guides, right? Because I find animals are pretty comfortable being in spirit. And everybody goes to the light, everybody crosses over. There have been a few times that I have had spirits that hadn't quite yet crossed over. And when I was first developing as a medium, I did have a friend that passed away around that time. And he actually indicated to me at the time that, he wanted to pass over, but he had passed away young and he still had a spouse that was here. And so he had been kind of lingering because he was worried about his spouse, because he passed very suddenly. It was out of nowhere. Nobody expected it. And so, obviously his spouse was, devastated and really was struggling to kind of grasp how to move on properly. And, his loved ones had shown up to kind of escort him across, but he was lingering kind of in the field. But pretty quickly he had realized that him lingering was actually preventing her from fully processing her grief. And so he actually came to me specifically because he wanted to be helpful also in passing as well, and help me to learn how to help spirits move forward when they need to. And this is a technique that I've done a few times as needed. Again, this is not common. Almost always spirits immediately cross over. But these were kind of some special circumstances. And so he had me, what we do is, going to connect him to those loved ones that are already there and ready waiting for, and we create this kind of energetic bridge. And then he was able to cross over. But he really wanted to show me, this process. And I think he probably could have done it on his own. But again, he was a helpful person in life, very sweet, very loving, very kind. And so he wanted to do the same in his passing, is be as helpful as possible. But I would say 99.9% of the time, spirits are already crossed over. There have been a couple other times when I have encountered spirits that were hadn't yet crossed over, and these weren't people that I knew or that were, clients of mine, as it were, connected to clients of mine. These were just kind of spirits that I encountered out in the wild, shall we say, and I was able to help those energies move forward, but some of them had been stuck for quite a long time. And I might share some of those stories at another time. But when I'm connecting, mediumistically, like I said, almost always they are already passed over. They are very comfortable. They're very happy. They've processed their life. There's usually a life review that happens immediately after somebody passes over, where they kind of go over the the story of their lives, the lessons of their lives. And I have also had family members of my own that came to me after their passing, and they did the life review with me. They came and they wanted to use kind of my perspective and my knowledge to help them go through the life review. And it was really fascinating to me because I had known those family members in a particular context, and through my own lens. And it was really, I got some really different context for who that person was and why they made the choices they made and the life they lived and how they felt about the life they lived. Things that I would never have come to on my own. So that was really fascinating. I do find that sometimes there are spirits that need some time to kind of if they had a particularly hard life, or they had some really challenging lessons they were working on, or they had a really challenging passing, they will kind of be put into this like cocoon state where they're kind of wrapped up, and they're in reviewing the lessons of their lives, and they're being given all of this love and this support and energy to help process their life and really remember about the essence of love and the essence of being human, and kind of really process what's going on. And sometimes they'll need to be in that cocoon state for a little bit. And so that might be, why they may have not been as present within a person's life or showing up as potently. But usually that period of time doesn't take too long, right? They just need some time to really process it. And time on the other side moves differently, of course, than it does here. So it's kind of relative. But, even within this process of the cocooning, they are not uncomfortable. They are not in pain. They are not upset. It's just kind of a part of their process. So by and large, everyone is very much content on the other side. They are comfortable. They are well. And while they miss and love the people on this side, and sometimes they may have regrets, it's not necessarily about being uncomfortable or being in pain. So number 2 of things your loved ones in spirit want you to know is they are with you all the time. And I mean this not in a creepy way, right? In that like everybody's like, are they watching me do this or that? And no, they give you privacy for the things. I also want to preface that, they are no longer in a body. And once I've been shown that once spirits are no longer in a body, they care a lot less about things relating to bodies, so bathroom habits, relations with our loved ones, intimate experiences. They're not there. They don't want to watch that. They're not interested in bothering you or taking away your privacy. What I mean more is that they are with you. They are supporting you. And even if you can't feel them every single moment, they're still there. They're still witnessing your life. They're still around you. They are still feeling what you're feeling. And most of the time, they are much more aware of who you are in a way that they probably couldn't grasp in life. Some of the dynamics that they had or attachments that they had in life, they might no longer have. They were often, much more expanded in their understanding of the world. And so they're able to energetically support you in a way that they maybe even couldn't in life, right? And not everybody. Some people are a little bit more attached to, the essence of them being human than others, right? And not everybody learns the lessons that they're supposed to learn when they're here. That's part of the free will choice that we have. But usually there's this kind of higher perspective that is immediately available to them once they cross over, where they're able to kind of really understand how you felt about things and how you felt about them. They know that you love them. They are aware of the unsaid things that were between you. I personally feel like it's never too late to tell a loved one anything. You know, if you weren't able to be there at the time of the passing or say the things before it's passing, it is never too late. You can still say them. And in a lot of ways, they're going to be able to understand that and process that better on the other side already. There are people in my life that I haven't been, I wasn't able to have the conversations in life because they weren't mature enough, or they weren't able to hear it or whatnot. And then, after passing, you can have a much more expanded conversation about those things. And so they're there and they're trying to give you signs. And if you ask them for signs, they will give you signs, and you just have to be open to receiving them. I think there's always this feeling of like wanting to have a really big, glowing sign with lights on it. And even then you're like, is that really the sign? And, for me, I think that there's this feeling that happens when something is a sign, right? It's like you look at that penny on the ground and you immediately think of the person and how they like to pick up pennies or whatever it is. And there's this feeling that it's a sign. And then people kind of sometimes discount that feeling. And I think that feeling is the sign itself, right? It's like you make the connection in your head that you normally would have made, and that's them kind of leading you into that is a sign, and I frequently have clients that will come back and they'll talk to me about, I saw this happen in my life, or I saw this thing. Do you think that's a sign? And I'm like, do you think it's a sign? If it feels like a sign, it most likely is a sign, and you should trust yourself on that. And your loved one is trying to communicate with you about it. So number 3 is you can connect to them whenever you want. And I know this is a little bit hard for people if they feel like they're like, I'm not a medium. And I personally believe that everybody has the ability to access mediumship abilities. Whether or not they've trained them is another story, or whether or not they believe that they can access them is another story. But I feel like, everybody has this as an innate gift of being human. And it's not something that's necessarily special and unique to mediums. It's just that mediums have, often they have a sensitivity that's turned up, but most of the time it's really that they've developed and trained it. And I've spent a lot of time and energy and money practicing and developing my mediumship and my intuitive gifts. And that's because it was something that I wanted to do and was passionate about and was literally called into doing. So, but you can connect to them whenever you want. And I know I often hear from loved ones, they might say, I really felt them a lot in the beginning, and then I didn't feel them as much anymore. There might be quiet times where it's, it doesn't feel as easy to access them. I promise they are still there. I promise they are still listening to you. I promise they are still sending you signs. It's just sometimes our life doesn't allow us to listen as deeply, or there's a lot of doubt that's happening. And sometimes even our loved ones will step back a little bit. They're there and they're present, but sometimes they want to let us figure it out for ourselves. And that is the most loving and kind thing they could possibly do, is to allow that space for us to process our feelings, or, not necessarily rely on them showing us all the time that they love us, that we just have to trust that, and we have to trust ourselves. And there are a lot of ways that you can connect. But really just, again, asking for signs within your life, I think, is one of the easiest and quickest ways to do it. And it might not be immediate, might not be like I ask for a sign and then 10 minutes later, I find a penny on the ground. It might be. But usually it's like within a few days or a week, there will be a very significant sign that is there. And I always recommend, talking to them out loud. I often have, when I'm connecting to people's loved ones, the loved one will show me like, this person talks to me all the time out loud. They show me them like really having conversations, and the person's like, yes, yeah, I do talk to them as if they're there all the time. And they just want to let you know that they hear you, they're they're fully present. They're hearing everything you're saying. They're witnessing what you're witnessing. Even if you feel like it's not a connection in the way that you want it to be, there is connection happening. And so, they're there and they're ready and they're listening and they are also communicating back. Don't underestimate those light flickers. Those are big ones. Messing with the electricity is sometimes the easiest way for them to kind of connect with you. And could be something you hear on the radio, could be a song that comes on really suddenly. And they're here, they're listening, and they want to connect with you. So number 4 on this is they want the best for you. And this is, I wouldn't say this is 100% of the time, because again, some people are more attached to their humanity than after they pass on. And they, some people still have some learning and growing to do as a soul. But I would say, again, 99.9% of the time, they want the best for you. And I've had, spirits come through and they have their opinions on things, right? And even though they want the best for that person, maybe that's not the most helpful advice that person could get. And I will still share the messages, but I'll say this is what Grandpa says, but I don't necessarily agree with Grandpa's perspective. This is based off of his experience, but I also want to be true and real to what this is. But based on the other conversations that we're having, this doesn't really feel like it's aligned with where you're at. And what I'm energetically reading on you, like this doesn't feel aligned with what you actually need right now. But Grandpa is very insistent that I communicate it as it is, right? But they still love you. They want the best for you. They are, paying attention to what's happening, and they are actually trying to pull strings on the other side to move things along. I've had loved ones that were, they passed on and their spouse is still here, and they are actually trying to call in a new partner for that person because they love them so much and they don't want them to be lonely, and they know that they need to be partnered in some way. And so they are kind of pulling the right energy in. I've had pets do that too for their next pet. They're like, I'm going to help this person pick the next pet, or I'm going to send them the perfect, new cat or new dog for them. Or they're like, I can see this job is, the right job for them. And so I'm going to pull some strings on my side to make sure their resume is at the top of the pile, or whatever it is that they can do to really support and help us. And I've seen that many times, that the loved ones are kind of indicating, they're like, some of them are wanting credit for it. They're like, by the way, they have big personalities and they want acknowledgement for the help and support that they're offering. But sometimes they just really want that person to believe in themselves and know that they believe in them on the other side, and that they're still there and they're still present in their life. And that's really beautiful. And so that brings me to number 5, which is being present in your life is the greatest gift that they can offer. It's the greatest joy for them. They are, again, paying attention to what's happening for you. They're paying attention to what is going on for them. They anytime, you've done anything to kind of honor them or acknowledge them, they want you to know that they notice that and they appreciate it, and they love that you talk to your children about them. They love that you are sharing things that they taught you with the world. They're loving that, you are uniquely yourself in this, and you're showing up. I often hear, especially kind of parents or, family members show up and be like, I see how you are with your children. I see how you parent differently than me and how that's exactly what your child needs instead of what I was able to offer you. Sometimes they'll show up and be like, I see how similar we are. That one's always interesting of like, I see that we're similar in these ways, or that you know, show up in your life, or you do these things that are similar to me, and they appreciate that, and they appreciate that connection that you have with them. And they're really, you know, just the joy in your life and seeing the things that you're doing and the successes that they have, they are celebrating with you constantly, and they want you to know that. And sometimes a lot of the signs that come through are around that, you know, around acknowledgments of things. And, you know, it's interesting, almost every time I do, I've done a market where I will go, or like a, you know, a psychic event or something where I'll go and I'll read for the public, you know, where I'm, you know, sitting in a booth, and whoever comes up to my booth, you know, wants a reading gets one. Almost every time I do one of those, I get a mom whose child has passed away from addiction or overdosing, or something along those lines. It's happened so many times, and it's so often that person really wants to acknowledge the actions that are done in memory for that person. A lot of these moms will, you know, go and they will be doing, you know, memorial events or fundraisers in honor of that person, and or they'll do some kind of, you know, memorial on a yearly basis, you know, at a particular location like the ocean, because that's what the person loved. Or, you know, they're trying, you know, I had one son that came through, and he was just like, I see that you're trying to help educate other parents about, you know, addiction and how to reach your kids. And he keeps saying about how, you know, even if you can help one person, that will be worth it. And she's like, I do say that all the time. And he's like, that's true. He's like, you have helped people, and you really need to feel that and know that you've helped people. And so they really, really appreciate things that are done in their memory and their honor. And they really want their loved ones to know that. And that's the biggest message. They don't want to talk about, you know, a lot of these parents especially will blame themselves, or they have a lot of guilt or things that they should have done. And these kids that come through, or these, you know, their children are very clear, like, it's not your fault, you know, there's nothing this was my journey, you know, they really want to, you know, soothe that part for their loved ones, and make it very clear that they need to not hold on to that guilt and that blame and that self-judgment, that they want to be remembered for other things in their lives, for the things that they love, for the joy that they brought to people, for the love that they gave, and you know, if they had a strong personality or they're funny or things like that. They don't want to be remembered in this way of it feeling like it's causing more harm in the long run. And, you know, again, like, I have really appreciated my own abilities in, you know, when people have passed in my life, of being able to connect with them in new ways and have them support me from the other side. You know, I had a couple friends pass away in the last couple years, and they were actually friends with each other, and they come through together. You know, they will very much show up, and one of them is very much kind of like guiding and helping the other one that needs a little more support. And but that friend will come up, and she will show up in ways that when I really need it, you know, she will come up and she will show me her light. She will reflect my own light to me. when I really need it. And it's so clear when she comes in, and it's the most beautiful thing. And I just so appreciate that I'm able to tune in and that I'm able to bring those connections through for other people. The healing that can happen from mediumship experiences are so powerful. And, maybe that person is no longer with us, and their physical body is no longer here. They're no longer in it. They're no longer present in, this plane of reality, but their love persists. Their essence persists. Their support for us is still there. And I think that's incredible. So thanks for joining me today. I hope that, this was helpful for those of you that have loved ones in spirit, even if these are things that you've heard before, if you've heard from other mediums, or if you've heard, from your own loved one. I think it's always nice to be, validated in that and hear them again. And I hope that this was supportive of you and that you can continue to remember your loved ones and the way that they would want. So I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to Medical Intuition Illuminated. If this episode resonated, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit. Special thanks to Derek Ryan for music. Until next time, listen deeply to the wisdom of your body.